Hello, everybody. Welcome to Rocket Lasso Live, episode 14 of season 4. How is everybody doing? Sounds like Dean's not doing too well. I hope you recover quickly from your COVID. I had it after NAB, and luckily I had already had 3 of the shots, so it was pretty mild overall for me. But I know a couple other people right now who have it as well, and it definitely sucks across the board. So how is everybody doing? Sound off, say hello, what's going on? Start putting some questions in the chat. If there's no questions, then we cannot do a live stream. So let's see, any news? I mean, of course, last week was all the 26.1 content, and there's a bunch of really cool things in there. It's amazing how quickly those new settings are important. Like, I've definitely used some of the new features already in stuff I've had to do, so that's pretty cool. Hello on YouTube. We got some people popping up already over there. We got some people on Twitch. Does anybody have, let me think, other news items? I can't really talk about that yet. I've been trying to ramp back up now that that video was done. Of course, you know, when a new thing like that comes out, I have to learn all the new content and prepare it, so I pushed back the work I was already doing and trying to get the utility splines video out. But that's all good. Let's see. We've got a question popping in. What do we got? From Adam Forbes on the Slack. Can you have the new cloth hang from the new dynamic rope? We can't seem to get the setup to work. Yeah, I think you totally can. Let's figure it out. Or let's figure out the specifics. Standard layout. This one I've got the utility splines lined up for the recording of those videos. So let's do the most basic possible thing we can. What's a quick, clean way of doing it? Actually, let's make a platonic shape and create a rope, and yeah, this should totally work. So let's go to 0, 0. Get rid of the rotation and clone the helix onto an object. The object will be this. I would like that to clone onto the vertex points. Keep in mind you have to be on for this type of connection it has to be kind of a point-to-point connection. Let's spin it around. I think we can do 180 and hopefully those aim, yep, pretty much perfectly straight out. Exactly what I wanted it to be. T for scale. Okay, so I believe if you actually want these things to connect, this needs to be cloth. So you have to say simulation cloth. It needs to be cloth. And this, it filters down through the entire thing. So we do simulation rope. I mean, I think it does work if you do it there, but they behave differently. So we might as well put it up here. And now on the rope, or on either really, we can say simulation connector. And actually here, to show it even better, I'll grab our cloner and scoot this a little bit away. There, see, I've now put 2 from the surface up to there. So now with this connector tag, again, let me make that connector tag, simulation connector, and in here, something that's nice is turn on live update, and now I can drag up the slider until you hit the threshold. Now we just knew for a fact it was going to work at 2. If I keep on going, you see that the line looks like it keeps on stringing out further, but keep in mind that's actually making more connections to more points on the line. And another thing, on this helix, I should set the helix to be none for subdivisions, because now there's exactly 100 points. But anyway, the connection I want to be pretty much like 2.1 should be fine. So that should be perfectly connecting from the cloth, this is a cloth object, to these individual ropes. Hitting Control D, I can, how would I want to do this? Control D, this is actually something I tinkered around with yesterday and actually kind of got working, so that's why I'm kind of confident in this. I'll turn off gravity, and, oh, that was not gravity. That's gravity. And, cool. So now there's no gravity, but I could make gravity again. We could do that however we like. Simulation wind, and we'll aim the wind down. And if wind, I think if we set wind to 40, it could be different in the system, but if I hit play, you see everything starts pushing down. It looks like it is different. I feel like the physics of this is a different speed. But anyway, you see everything's getting pushed down. But now in the cloth object, I can say forces, like limit to, and I can say the wind, like I think I can say don't look at the wind. So now it doesn't want to move. No, maybe it does go down. Maybe that's turning it on and off to being seen. So let's see if this trick works. Removing that, I'll make a second wind, and this wind will have no power. And I'll say limit to this, essentially like empty, this empty wind. Now in the past, we had essentially, we could say, include only or limit to being opposites, and that I don't think exists here. But let's see if that worked. So it's still getting pushed down, but empty, limit to, wind. But it might not be wrong yet, because now what I'm going to do is, like, this rope has some sort of weight to it, and I need to tell the cloth to be very, very heavy. So that's kind of compensating a bit. But like, if we start making that like super heavy, then now these ropes, which in theory are being blown by the wind, might pull it down. If I hit play, there we go. Now it's so heavy that these ropes essentially have relatively no influence on it. And you can see that the cloth has now become essentially a static object that will be collided with. So let's, I don't know, well, let's make that way stronger and let those fall. So yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of a kind of, I guess there's a couple little workarounds going there. Let's see some other things. They're getting dragged down a little bit, so there could be additional things. I mean, I could put a collider inside and whatnot, but that's just a thought. That connector, you can see these connections are being made. Now we did have it be a little further away, so I could say target length is, like 1%. So that will tug them in closer. So you see those will actually get tugged in, and they'll pretty much be touching the point. I think it's actually, we could even say 0, because they modified it so that this point isn't trying to push against the cloth point. Like things that are welded together via these connections now ignore each other, instead of being like 2 points that are trying to occupy the same space and thus adding energy into the scene. So that's a huge improvement. So now, yeah. So anyway, here's rope connected to cloth. Now this could have been any piece of cloth. We could have set this up however we like. This is just what we happen to set up here. It looks pretty good. Now it would be, well, I mean, there's other things we could do. But just to show, if we get rid of the cloth and I say, actually, just make that a collider. And now if we go back in this connector and say, like, hey, give us those live updates, you see it doesn't make that connection. I wish there's an easy way. I wish that I wish that the connectors saw collider objects, because it'd be really easy to connect to a collider object. Now, let me hit undo and get that other one back just so I can save the scene file. That will be available on Patreon. So let's go into episode 14, scene files. 1A, rope stuck to cloth. Boop. Okay, delete the cloth and make this a simulation collider. Here's your alternative is I could, we probably have to make this editable. I'm going to make this not be so far away. Well, it's only 1, but yeah, still. Make that editable. I want to connect it actually, so put that into a connect object, make that editable, and then the tags disappear. So I'm going to move those tags to something safe, delete, move them back to the object. So now these are all one model. Now, of course, well, here's the problem is if we want to do the setup in a maybe more controlled way, we have to make it editable, which is, obviously something we avoid when we can. Select all, points, invert, shrink, UK, invert, and now I grabbed only the tips, and now it's pretty simple to deselect. So now I've only got these inner ones selected very, very easily. So this connect now does nothing, but we could now say simulation rope belt, because this is on the rope object. So I'd like to rope or bind it to what? So I can say this shape. I don't even know if that has to be dynamic, but we do want to collide with it. So I'll say yes, set. And now you'll see that what's different about this is there's no radius. What this will do is that point is going to look for the closest possible geometry that it can connect to. And it will connect to that. So this time we didn't have to have it with a radius. We got the same offset. Right now it's trying to maintain that offset. But again, we could drop that down to a small number. So that should, decrease the speed or decrease the distance between the connections. So having done that, that should now be connected to what is not. This is now just a collider. So hitting play, we can now see that those are successfully connected to the surface. It did seem like they popped a bit more than I want them to. So, and I mean, I tend not to push the, yeah, that's interesting. Look at them jump. Why is that happening? Put the offset back to 100. I wonder what the offset... That seems odd. If I put the offset back to the original thing, you see it stays there. But if I start shrinking it, it seems to be like yanking the rope inside. I'm not sure what that means. I thought that was going to be offsetting from its original point to the final. But it's behaving more like it's to the axis or something, which I don't think is correct. Maybe if Fritz is watching, he can... add some clarification. But anyway, now we've kind of got a fake artificial gravity due to this wind, although we don't need that anymore. I could delete that, and those all start drifting up. And we'll put the regular gravity back on again, so those can all fall and successfully collide with each other, which is nice. But yeah, now that those are all there, adding a vibrate tag to enable this to spin around. 0.1. So yeah, now we actually have control over this. We can animate it, keyframe it, put any kind of animation we like on there, and let these all twirl around. And like, look at how beautiful these like the tangling of these are. I mean, that's the best thing about the new system is how easily that stuff works. I'll increase the radius a bit, and we'll add a bunch of friction. So now they should be super inclined to tangle. And yeah, immediately, just with the extra friction, do you see how like they start getting stuck on each other more? Like, look at that. So good. But yeah, and making things editable isn't, it's not the worst thing. It's just something we avoid. I mean, I tend to be obsessed with it, but I don't think that's, something to super duper worry about. Tangle, tangle, tangle. Pretty cool. I like it. All right. I'll save this as the next version. Scrolling up in the chat. Let's see. I think somebody might have. I see. I'm assuming somebody on YouTube, because you can't put links, tweeted something at me right now to check it out. And there are some cool images, but what is this? It's a request for Redshift tutorials. Where, here's the problem. Well, I need to know the artist who made it, Vesson. So like if I can't give credit to an original artist, I can't, I'm not gonna try and tackle it. So please, if you want, the best way to do this is actually jump over onto Twitch. Just go search Twitch, Rocket Lasso, and then join the chat there. Super easy. And what's nice about that is you even get email notifications when I'm going live. But anyway, oh yeah, and Sharon, you can totally ask questions. If you're on YouTube, you have to type out a question. You can't link to something. But yeah, I'm jumping back and forth between chats. I love answering typed out questions. Yes, and welcome everybody on YouTube. Welcome everybody on Twitch. Scrolling up, checking some other questions. Thanks for the subscription. Nico, maybe this can help you. Oh, peer, that's a fun question, and we'll do simulation stuff, which I don't think is affected by any of the new settings, but asking if we can simulate aluminum foil wrapping. Oh, you didn't say crumpling. You said aluminum sheet wrapping up something. Interesting. That's more challenging for certain. It, I feel like we probably can. The problem goes to... Think of, like, just imagine how dynamic... Let me switch the screen. Imagine in real life how dynamic the movement is to... Like, imagine that, whatever, you have an apple and then you have a sheet of aluminum foil. Imagine all of the little subtle motions that you would do to fold the aluminum foil over the model, or over the apple. Like, you would have to, like, put the apple in it and then bend the foil over it and start patting it down and kind of... You'd be doing so many different motions, and this isn't just like a keyframe. It's the shape of your hand and grabbing the foil and moving things into the proper location. Like, there would be... This is like a similar problem to, like, origami. Like, you know, to actually fold real life origami, you probably have to do so many folds. It's going to take like a significant amount of time to do it in real life. It's going to be so much worse in 3D. Having said that, you know, so essentially lowering our expectations because we're going to have to fake a lot of it, where it's like we can't be that dynamic with all the placement and all the different ways. Let's see what we can do. One of the... This would be a lot potentially better if we had a stiffness setting in cloth, which is one of my major requests. We don't have that yet. So, and I'm hoping at some point in the future we do get something along those lines. So, yeah, we can't push that too far. So let's just bring in something a little more interesting than, you know, a cube. Although I am going to scale this just so we get kind of regular simulation scale. I'm going to scale the head up until it's about the size of a cube. So just the head from the asset browser. That should be fine. Let me think. I actually kind of want to round this out a little bit, so let's spend a moment and do a little bit of modeling. Let me see how quickly we can do this. If I grab a couple of loops here, like so, and melt them away. Have they added a shortcut to dissolve? I feel like they did at some point. Dissolve, MN. Okay, so that dissolves away. And then I'll loop that, fill to get that, and then hit MG for, that's going to take a while. Blah, 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 blah. It will take a while, but it can be done. Oh yeah, and then grow by one. Hit. Strength all the way. I wonder if there's a quicker way of iterating that. But you can see, you can see what I'm doing there. I'm just kind of melting that in. Nice. I mean, if you were, less geometry would have made that go a little bit quicker, I suppose. Like we could do another edge loop. And is there a second loop we can get? Yeah, sort of that one. MN to dissolve. And I'm just trying to even out the polygon count, even though that's not super important in this case. MG, we'll just melt. Yeah, just get a little smoother. Okay, so we got a modified head there. So, the basic thought goes to, we need to convert how do we make a sheet of paper go mostly around the head is one trick. So we're going to need it to be, I mean, if it's going to be good aluminum foil, we'll have to subdivide it a lot, but let's go easy on it to begin with. So we've got a giant sheet of aluminum foil, probably even bigger, probably even more subdivided. Let's distinguish between, I won't do anything fancy, let's just set the material to something dark. And you know what, actually, why don't we make a very quick metallic material, because we can. Redshift material, standard redshift material, apply to the plane, select just once. I want it to be fully metallic and pretty dang shiny. Okay, there we go. Some very basic aluminum foil for us. We're doing some decently crazy simulation stuff, so save to a foil head. Okay, so the head becomes a collider, rigging or simulation collider. The foil will be a rope simulation. For now, I'm going to make it very bendy. So as a basic thing, if we just hit, let's pause that and set my computer to CPU and let that drop. So you can see that that's doing a fine job of kind of falling. It's going to be very, how do we put this? It's kind of a lot of energy going through, so I'm going to put a bunch of damping. So you can see if I let that fall, that's going to be draining energy out very quickly so it doesn't kind of flap all over the place. So here's sort of my thought is if we allow it to loosely drape like this, then we can push it further is my thought. So I think it's actually a little bigger than it needs to be. So let's start out with that. Now, in order to get aluminum foil wrinkles, it's going to have to be pretty dang subdivided, I think. I don't know how far we can push the system until it starts getting upset. So let's double that. Okay, still running pretty well. It's actually, there's such a nice resolution, or relatively high resolution, we actually see the polygons that are making up the head. So that needs to be subdivided. So I'll subdivide it just once, moving the collider tag up to it. It's still running just fine, and that's significantly smoother, although I can still see the faceting. So you can see we get a nice sheet draping over it. Now, pushing this further, let me think. Lots of different things we could do. Like a thought is, like, I feel like gravity's not like a great way of, or gravity's fine. It's kind of getting away from what I want it to be. So I'm going to turn gravity off. So it just is static there. And we can't, like I said, we can't animate a hand perfectly pushing everything against this. Although I did just think of something that could be kind of neat if it did work. Actually, that's not a bad idea. Okay, this is going to be maybe a multi-step thing. And I mean, there's a difference here of like modeling a aluminum foil ball on there and animating an aluminum ball. But here is my first thought. What if, this is going to be weird. I'm going to make a sphere, and I'm going to make the sphere pretty dang big. Okay, that's fine. Set the sphere to an icosahedron. It will also be cloth. And I want to see it, but I don't want it getting in our way. So I'm going to say other tag. Nope, it's not under other. It's under render, display, use lines. By the way, there's construction. The construction I mentioned is happening outside. So if you get any background noise, apologies for that. Okay, so this is now cloth, and it's going to be colliding with this other piece of cloth, I think, in theory. But we have the balloon setting. So if we tell this to take like a long time, I'm going to say like 200 frames, but I want to go to like 0.2% of its pressure. Well, let's just see what that does. Essentially, that means it's going to, several things I want to do. Tell the ball to be very bendy. I'm going to tell it to be very stretchy. Hopefully that works. Okay, so let's see what happens here. Yeah, even before you saw it started pop. Well, okay, we'll just have to see what happens. But okay, so that's starting to. It's under pressuring, but you can see that it is. It's grabbing this and starting to push it down. So okay, interesting start. Okay, and then it's doing a fine little job of crumpling that. Okay, we're learning some things. In the foil, I don't want it to be very bendy. I'm going to say bendiness 0, stretchiness 0. But then let's go to plastic deformation. I'm going to turn both of those on. And the default settings are pretty good. We could make it way more sensitive, so I could say deform past 1%. And we could say deform past 100, and I mean 101 might be too low, but I'll say 105. So essentially we're saying if it bends at all, it is now permanently bent. And if it stretches at all, it's permanently stretched. So let's, we don't need to shrink this slowly. So let's say I really like this expansion time setting. So let's cut that time in half. So now that's going to start shrinking and crushing. And yeah, now you can see that it doesn't want to bend. So you see how it starts crumpling up. So pretty good. Okay, nice. Now let's get some gravity back on again. So hitting, let's just leave it default and see what happens. So that's going to pull down. So I'm going to make there be gravity, but only a little bit, like 100. So it's about a ninth of the original. The point being is I don't want it to just like flop over, but I do want it to have a downward movement. Might need to be a little stronger than we currently have it. Yeah, let's double that. It starts crushing in. It's getting caught in some of these wrinkles, so let's do... I'm going to try making it way stretchier. Because this balloon, it under pressures it, but it's not actually shrinking it. It's actually just deflating it. And a theory, one of my theories here was that we were going to be using a sheet of aluminum foil. Keep in mind, we could have just made this outer sphere be the ball shrinking and crushing out there, which would be, I think, significantly easier. Jump the point count way up on that, so it's going to probably deform in a slightly more dynamic way. The stretchiness just definitely being seen there. Getting pulled down. I like the overall shape. It did not under pressure as much as I wanted it to. Put that all the way to 0. All the stretchiness, I think, is maybe defeating us a bit. Yeah, that's going to make it crumple. The stretchiness is defeating the point of it a bit. Crunch, 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 crunch. So that's interesting. I mean, it's, you know, it's doing an okay job of some of what I want to do. How do, I mean, like I said, a lot of this is going to be like multi-step, a lot of multi-step things. So this crumpling is great, but I feel like I kind of want it to be a little bit pre-crumpled, if that makes sense to you. So let's see if we can actually shrink the aluminum foil. There's no, it's not a volume, so we can't use the balloon on it. So how could we make the foil look a little bit pre-crunched? I mean, we could just deform it, but I kind of want to do it via wrinkling. Actually, we might be able to force it with a cube. So I'll make a cube. Trap it decently inside. Get a few subdivisions. Maybe not too many. And I'll just copy that shrinking thing onto it. And let's just see what that gives us. The sphere is a little big, or it's small. Okay, so that is cloth is going to start falling down, but it's also shrinking, so hopefully it will pre-crumple. The box should do it twice as fast. So just get a little bit of pre-crumpling. Let's see if it actually works. It's deflating. You can see it deflating. It's actually pushing in. Although it is more wrinkly up there. Is it actually oh, I did tell it to be very stretchy. Turn that off. Okay, interesting, interesting. Is that escape? No, it did deform. Okay, that's working pretty well. Although I think is it escaping the box? It's hard to tell what's going on here. No, it's not. You see that the box is there. Okay, nice. Okay, so the thought would be that is now pre-crumpling it up a bit. So can we oh, you cannot keyframe enable. I was kind of counting on being able to keyframe enable. Fritz, request. We need to be able to keyframe enable because I want to be able to turn that box off. Okay, what could we possibly do? I don't think we can tell the geometry to ignore each other. Well, okay, we're running a couple limitations here, but I think there are still some ways around it. We can't keyframe tearing, but we can keyframe the tear past. So if I say that this has to be up at like 5,000 to tear, it's not going to be there. But if I go one frame further and say tear past 0, then all of those, all the points of the cube should essentially rip apart. I don't know for sure. Let's hit play and see if they do indeed begin to rip. Again, a little hard to tell. Let's just take a look at the box. I did tell it to tear, right? Tear past 100. Go back to the keyframe. I'll say tear past 0. Oh, wait. Oh, they clamped it? They clamped it at 100. It didn't used to be clamped at 100. I want to be able to go to smaller values. Lame. That was a change in 0.1. Okay, let's see what happens. If that's supposed to be able to tear, you can see what's happening a little bit better there. Oh, okay, they did break. They seem to be, maybe they're still trapped and they're still colliding with things. And we can't get rid of them. Those are still like colliding surfaces, but at least it's not really structural anymore. And we get the entire thing folding over. So if we go back to kind of visually ignoring it, you see that we're getting some okay wrinkles up there. There's several additional details that I would love to be what do I want to do? Some of these polygons are stretching or exploding a bit from the foil, and I said no stretchiness, so, but I did say it stretches trivially, so maybe we shouldn't let it stretch. Let's change that and see what it looks like. Force the wrinkle. Okay, it looks like it's hard. I don't want to pass judgment yet, but it doesn't look like it's stretching, which is good. So no, some of them are stretching, which, you know, if we force things into impossible situations like that will just happen. Okay, so let's just say we've got some nice wrinkles there. Again, if you're trying to do an entire animation, you have to imagine an entire hand doing its thing. And I will save this file at this current state because it's interesting. Making the foil editable, we have to do that because what I would like to try and do is run this first part of the simulation. And you see all the things that are happening. I wonder if we should, let's subdivide that cube a little bit more. Not like a ton more, just double it. Ooh, very different. Okay, yeah, but a little more even on those wrinkles. Anyway, so you can see we're getting this overall like pulled down, wrinkled shape. Having done that, if I pause it, go into our foil and say dresser initial state set. Now when I rewind, you can see that's already in that shape, meaning I can turn off that cube, and now we can essentially use this as a series of modeling techniques. So, and you can only do that when it's been made editable. So hitting play, although I don't know why it would have to be when it's made editable, because it's a deformer. So again, that feels legacy. So again, Fritz, why would the initial state need to be editable to set? Because that would be getting stored in the tag. Oh, anyway. Okay, so again, we'll let this scrunch down, and we're already in this different shape. Actually, I guess that's kind of working. I'm going to do a little different. But anyway, the point being, I'm just going to shrink the sphere down. I just don't want it to, actually, no, yeah, we need it to not be intersecting because there is no front and back on cloth, only on a collider. Okay, so now that is a little smaller. It's going to shrink smaller because I made the initial state smaller. So again, hopefully this starts scrunching pretty good. So yes, some nice-ish crumpling there. And now I can click on the foil and say set initial state. Rewind again. Now it's already in this position. Turning off gravity entirely because everything's already kind of wrapped around the bottom. Let's scrunch it again. So yeah, this is we're repeatedly squishing it. Squish. I don't know if that one added too much, but again, set the state. Rewind. Shrink. Still can't shrink the sphere too much. I'm gonna lower our count because it's gonna be less likely to bend. And I think we speed it up a hair. Scrunch, come on, squish it. Oh, don't start exploding. Oh, I think it might be exploding. It's exploding. Because, you know, there's a lot going on there, but is there anything we can specifically do? I mean, it's looking all right there. I feel like what we'd probably need to do here, and I'm not entirely sure if it works. Yeah, even that, see, I'm a little worried. I just duplicated the foil, and you see it immediately lost that shape. If I right-click and say current state to object, did that. Yeah, so okay, that should be a duplicate, meaning we can keep our original, turning it off. So if I have to go back there, I can. And now, in theory, even if I say clear, yeah, you see this one's now baked down to the shape. And the reason I did that is I would like to subdivide. U-Shift-S, and probably don't do a smooth subdivision. You see I've now doubled our polygon count, but that means we can get more detail in there. With some wrinkles already having done its thing. So here is that same cloth ready to do its thing. So let's squish it again. We have doubled it. It's going to go slower, but there's more geometry for it to work from. All things considered, this is working like impressively well. It's kind of like we're doing really ridiculous things here. And instead of like doing a hand pushing on it, we're just kind of squishing this overall thing on it. Okay, that's doing a pretty good job. I don't want it to explode, so I will say dresser set initial state, so I can rewind because it did shrink significantly, and now I can shrink the ball down again. Because every time I shrink the ball down, it's able to shrink itself further. Squish, squish, squish. As these collisions are happening, everything's going to take longer and longer and longer to calculate, I think. We might also have a couple explosions starting to happen. Yeah, definitely a couple explosions. The polygons might be getting compressed to a point that they don't super like the situation. Let's just let this push in a little bit. Yeah, not even too much, because I think it will start exploding. Okay, set initial state again. Now, I actually kind of forgot because I was going to be doing a completely... This started working so well, I was going to actually do a completely different technique. Well, once we got to a significantly earlier step, because this is looking all right. Now, I do think that we got some polygons that are scooting through each other. In general, it's doing a good job, but there was a couple bits of simulation. And keep in mind, we could have cranked up some settings. But there are a couple different bits of simulation that didn't fold too well. But I think it's kind of cool looking, and for the most part, it should be avoiding colliding. If we were to put this into a subdivision surface, then yeah, you can see that those don't look like they're passing through each other too much. Anyway, I want to probably save this as the next version and then make a field force. Field forces are integrated. There's a limitation right now where if you make a field force, it only sees the field force. You can't like combine this with wind. You can only have one field force right now, which I don't know if that's a limitation or a bug. I'm hoping it's a bug. Anyway, this is going to be seeing the field force. The field force is going to be looking at the head of the figure. It's going to be looking at the surface of the figure. It's going to have a really large radius. And essentially what this should mean is it's attracting everything towards the head. I wonder if I can set this to an absolute speed, which is like, you have to be moving, and you have to be moving in this direction. It's a little bit dangerous. We just saved it, though, so I'm going to save this immediately as the next version, because this other one was the squishing of the foil ball. Now, let's hit play. Okay, you can see that everything's moving away, so we have to invert the direction. Field force, female bust, direction, invert. By default, it's inverted, so now we have to re-invert. De-invert, what would be the, what's the right word for that? Okay, so that should be pulling in. It's set to an absolute velocity. It's a little bit slow. It's not even that it's a little bit slow, it's that we're doing a lot of, it's not that there's a high polygon count, it's that there's a lot of collisions happening with a relatively high poly count. If nothing was colliding, this would be running really fast. But you can see right now, everything's getting pulled towards the head, which is pretty much what I wanted. Now, we might have been able to do this step a little bit earlier instead of squishing over and over and over and over again with the sphere. If we just got it to the general shape, and then we just say everything squish in. And like I said, this is being forced to move in a particular direction to the best of its ability by saying set absolute velocity. And it's doing a pretty good job, actually, of pulling everything in. So I never know if we're going to get an explosion or not. So there's no reason not to grab the foil and say set initial state. So this is where we're beginning. We can rewind again and then keep on going. So, you know, it does give you a bit of almost like safety margin there. Now, this is all working fine. I think I might make it super bendy now. We'll make it pretty bendy. And you know what? Let's see what happens if I make it kind of stretchy. Why did... Oh, that's something was acting a little bit weird there. But anyway, by making it a little bendy, a little stretchy, I think it's just going to make it, you know, even easier for this to pull in. Now, I think we're kind of seeing the limitation of the current resolution of this crazy shape. Again, we could set the initial state, and that is, you know, it's just looking how it is. Again, right-clicking, current state to object, disable that one, and now we work from a third copy of it. And this third copy, and the reason I do that is because I want to subdivide it again. So U, S, U, S. Yeah, there we go. Oop. Oh dear. Did I just subdivide twice? That, I think I just subdivided twice. Undo. Yeah, I only meant to subdivide once. I wasn't at the time of 0, and I was changing the polygon count, so maybe that's not a good idea. But it recovered. Okay, so I doubled the polygon count again, and we still have all the same forces going. So, hitting play. I mean, it's going to take way longer, but I think, you know, as long if we even just get a couple of frames of these doubling up, we're essentially doubling the resolution. Yeah, doubling the resolution of the entire setup. And the hope would be we get like double the wrinkles going. So yeah, it did process a frame, but that just took like 20 seconds for one frame. So yeah, we're not going to let this go for very many frames. Now, you will see a limitation here where, like, this is vaguely spherical now, but we're definitely not seeing the detail of the face. If we subdivide, you know, depending on the shape we put on there and everything, like, it potentially could work. But, like, I don't think we could, like, properly pat this thing down and perfectly get everything going. Pause. Set. Rewind. Field force. Make it way stronger. Just so that each step does more, which, you know, potentially is a bad idea. Something else I just thought of. Probably be good to put like no friction. There's probably some friction on this, and you know, it's better if it all slides freely past each other. Tag. Yeah, it's not much friction, but a little. Also thickness. I mean, thickness is kind of important. I'm gonna set that down like 0.5. Which, you know, at any given point, any settings I change might be like, oh, nope, that's away from the defaults, which means other things need to be calibrated, need to be fixed. But let's just let this do maybe 2-3 frames. Although that one frame there did do a lot more. Like it's definitely pulling in. Some of the top got a little bit flat. I think just like it's just the way it coincidentally kind of did its thing. I mean, it's a nice foil ball. It's the nicest foil ball we've ever made. As far as it having taken on the explicit shape of this, like, probably not so good. And, like, imagine doing all these steps, but having to have it be one giant simulation where it's like this thing pushes down and this other thing pushes over and this one does this and that one does this. And then just imagine, okay, imagine that I had a sphere and I was animating the sphere to like pretend to be a hand and like pat down the overall shape. And it's like, okay, I finally got like, whatever, 1,000 keyframes and it's like doing all these amazing pushing down. And it's like, I need to double the polygon count because it wasn't enough, or I have to increase gravity or any setting. That would invalidate all 1,000 keyframes I did because suddenly the simulation would be different. So that would be like super insane. I'm going to pause it if it can. When it comes to a super slow play, I didn't do it here, but what I did do is I clicked on pause. I didn't just click. I clicked and held for a while. When you're in these situations, it's hard to... Well, it did work, so I stand by that technique. Address set. Okay, so that's now the state of it. I mean, I guess to be safe, we can always say do another current state to object. And we get the potentially final one and A. So yeah, we get, it's pretty wrinkled up, like it's all clustered. But I mean, at certain points, like, even though, simulation wise, like this actually is probably pretty well folded. Well, yeah, actually, when I go to the correct angle, like we are seeing the pits of the eyes and whatnot. We got some of these larger clumps where the foil just like layered up. But like, we're actually kind of getting the chin. It's more of the shape than I thought we would get from like kind of where we were on that. But anyway, there is a level in which this doesn't look all that different. Let me show you what I'm thinking. This doesn't look all that different than if we just made a copy of the head and on this copy make it silver and make a random to form the points. Group. There you go. Yeah, so look, I just did that. Like, I just made, look at this, like, collapsed foil effect. And I just did that in, like, 20 seconds. So, was it worth all that extra time and effort to get it to essentially this state when even this is, like, matching the overall shape of the face better? This would probably be fine. Having said that, what did pop into my head... let's delete a bunch of this stuff. I'll save this as another version. I don't know if this will be any better, but here is my final thought on the topic. If we inflate this subdivided head out a bit, nodes, extrude, grab a node. Actually, let's put that directly in the head, which is going to look, it's going to look pretty weird down there. It's based on the current selection, actually. So it's a good idea to do a select. Is it build selection? I think it's just select. I'm going to say select. Yeah, now it's selecting all the polygons. So yeah, it's super exploding, but if I say extrude, use islands, now it's all one. Anyway, the point is I just want to inflate this a bit. Boop, boop, boop. Now, we gotta be careful about intersecting. But if we inflate that out a bit and it subdivides, some of these are passing through themselves, but I'm just going to ignore that. So here's the thought. It's like, okay, now this might not work at all, but now we've got a head and it's too subdivided. We've got a head, and then outside of it, I have this, perfect head-shaped ball of foil. So if we run the simulation on this subdivided head directly, and essentially we change nothing, we say it's not, a little bendy, a little stretchy, kind of all default, and it's just going to bend. It's going to deform if it bends, and we'll just do a whole bunch of under pressuring. So now it's going to shrink down, but because it's larger than the head, it's going to try and, did I save? Yeah, I'll save that. So now you can see that it's deflating, and it's kind of funky the way it just all pinched down to the face there. This probably still has 0 friction though. No, it's got some friction. How about that? That's got some friction. I'm adding a little more friction. They are intersecting, so maybe that's what it doesn't like. Well, you can see the concept starting to happen. You see we get some nice wrinkles along some of the surface, but all of the I think some of these areas are intersecting, and those intersections aren't working so great. We might be able to push this a little bit further though. Like if we inflate this head more, so like, it's getting ridiculous, but let's grab a smoothing deformer. And after the extrude, I start smoothing it. You can see like, okay, it looks a little ridiculous, kind of creepy, honestly, but even better, even better. Why am I doing it this way? This is silly. I'm gonna rescue that tag. Delete all that. Okay, we don't need any of that. What we need is a volume builder. And I'll just drag a copy of the head in. And that will go into a volume mesher. Yeah, this is so much better. Volume mesher. And now, decent resolution on it. That's fine. Also, pre-subdivide. Make it look like foil so we can tell which is which. Okay, so scroll. So now volume builder, inflate, and now I can just inflate it to whatever I want. So let's push this at like 10, and now you can see that there's no intersections here. It just kind of works. So now we can inflate this however we want. So that gets fed into a remesh, which will drop this down to 50% of the polygons, and it will be mirrored on X. So you see that. There we go. Nice and even. Probably want it to be a little bit lower. Let's start with 25. Perfectly inflated effect, but it's got very even topography, which is the goal here. Very even. In fact, I'll get rid of adaptive so that every polygon is pretty similar in size. Okay, love it. Great. Now I rescued that cloth tag. I will throw this into a connect because why not? And now it's going to deflate that. So here's what's cool is instead of having to like push and pull, we should, let me hit play and just see what happens. And it's like, oh, okay. Well, that's interesting. Is it tearing? Tearing's not on, so it's not tearing. But it sure as heck looks like it's tearing. It must have passed through the head. And the head should be set to front. Interesting. Let's give it's back to default. It looks good for a second there. You see how it's like doing an okay job of kind of wrinkling up. But then I'm not sure what happens at a certain point. The over or under pressuring that much, it is a lot. So maybe that's freaking it out. Like there's so much force that it's freaking out. Yeah, you see that? Well, it's sneaking through, but it's sneaking through less. So let's say like 0.2. So yeah. So that's kind of interesting. Bendiness, I'm going to put a lot of bendiness. Let's see how that affects things. Everything ends up, I think we might want really, really high friction because what's ending up happening is everything's eventually getting pinched. It's pulling the air out, so everything's eventually getting pinched to a very particular spot. And I don't want that to happen. It's like everything's looking pretty good until we get to a certain point. And suddenly it's like, okay, the air's getting sucked out from these areas, and it ends up in very limited spaces. It's almost like seam lines, which is kind of cool. but like the first few frames here are looking great, like that. And then suddenly, like all these nice wrinkles that are starting to go will get pulled away. And I'm not sure what is specifically making them get drawn into a particular spot. It's beginning to happen right here. I mean, kind of a cool effect, but anyway, one of the reasons I was so excited about this concept is we could be like, okay, there's not enough material here. It's not wrinkling up enough. So I can just go into the volume and say, okay, let's push that out further. So it's going to inflate it more. And then the volume builder inflates. The remeshes it again. And now it's reinflated with essentially that same polygon count, but kind of perfect. So now there's even more material. You can see how, yeah, look how just by inflating a little bit more, do you see how there's more material here to start getting more wrinkles in different spots? It's actually pretty symmetric as well. It's kind of nice. I mean, yeah, in this case, I do want it to be symmetric. We could stop it from being so if we didn't. Now we still get those wrinkles going. And this is behaving, you know, this is not unrealistic. It's not the same as crumpling, but it's not unrealistic. So let's keep pushing that. Like, would that actually give us some pretty good wrinkles? 25. A little bit could go a long way here, and the polygon counts could matter. It's running relatively quickly right now, so I'm kind of letting it. But yeah, now all of those get pulled in, and then eventually everything's getting pulled down to these little wrinkles. But every time I inflate it more, you see we get more of those wrinkles. Some are exploding, but yeah, we are pushing this to some pretty ridiculous limits. If we find the proper level of pressure, it could be that you know, we could stop it before it goes like too far, and then potentially do additional methods. Like, yeah, so that this one's now stopping a little bit earlier, and that's, you know, that's pretty interesting. Kind of freaky. So let me go to a couple things. Let's this is really fun. Let's turn off the symmetry, because that means that the polygons might not be identical on both sides, so it might add a little more randomness. Yeah, it's pretty dang symmetrical, but not perfectly. I can already tell on the nose. And then, I mean, there's other things we could do if we don't want this to be even. And actually, feel better, Dean, if you're still there. Get better soon. I'm thinking I want to random. I'm going to randomize. If we I kind of want to randomize the volume builder. That might not be the best place to randomize. This is going to explode. But then if we use a light touch and put a smooth, there's a lot of layering we can go here, but since it's doing a cool new effect that we couldn't do before, I don't mind exploring this a little bit further. So we'll smooth that and not go too far. A little, yeah. So you can see I'm kind of I'm putting in more surface area is what I'm doing. Why did something about the viewport just changed? Because it's showing this as transparent instead of, what did I do? Volume. Yeah, now it's shiny. Now it is remeshed, and then it's connected. That's all fine. But if I randomize this, maybe it's doing that because it's still calculating. Smooth. So, you know, this is increasing surface area, and don't underestimate surface area. Like, this little bit of displacing I did might have doubled the surface area. I don't know for sure, but it might have doubled it. It has made the mesh significantly more complicated, so you can see that it's having to calculate more. We might push it to the point. There is a certain point I have definitely pushed the remesher to the point where it's like, I don't know what to do with this. So, like, this might not complete. It is still technically moving forward a little bit, but I want to keep on making more changes. So this isn't working for me. So here's a slight modification. So instead of deforming instead of inflating, well, I do want to inflate the original. Okay, here's a thought. Okay, we're going to do that, and you see it's all super deformed. That's all great. So now I'll duplicate the volume builder. Delete, delete, delete. Drop the volume mesher So we're going to take this volume, feed into another volume, so this will not inflate it at all. And now this is going to make a much cleaner mesh. Like this now has a more sensical thing of things that aren't overlapping each other, to make it so that our remesh should have an easier job of it. That's the hope, at least. It did get there quicker, but it's still not super happy. I mean, all these lumps. Yeah, I don't know how the algorithm works, so it's still kind of getting stuck there. We could. Oh, it did finish. Okay, it did finish. Okay, so it takes a little more time, but you can see that it's now pre-lumpy. It's already lumpy before anything else happens, and it's still entirely parametric rig, which is pretty cool. So now if we let this de-inflate, you can see that it's already kind of got these natural little pits that's trying to go into. And yeah, like that's pretty cool. That's pretty weird and gross. If you asked me how to make this, I'd be like, oh man, how would you make this? We've got more that we can do for sure. Right now, more polygons will add more detail. I kind of want it to be like even more lumps. So let's tell this to, I won't go crazy, let's do 45. We'll have to recalculate that. But we already saw the other one finish, and this should be easier for it because it's not trying to reduce as much. It will take a while still. But in the other one, I was about to give up thinking it wasn't working, and it suddenly finished. There. Okay, so finished. We should see that it's a decently higher, not quite double, but quite a few more polygons. Now I will duplicate in the connect. I'm going to put a copy of the random and the smoothing, and that is now applying to the remesh. Now I want to be careful. Essentially, if we push this too far and we get polygons passing through each other, like that's a bad thing. The smoothing will go a long way. It is random. It is pure randomness right now. So these lumps are coming from pure randomness, not from noise. If we set that to noise, we could, blah, blah, blah. If we get rid of smooth. So this is what it's actually doing. Keep that in mind. So I could increase this. Oh, this is projected in an interesting and weird way. Yeah, I don't like the random noise is not a good noise. You need the random field does a way better job than random noise. But anyway, I'm going to put that back to pure random. And now that pure random can go through the smooth, and the smooth actually puts it back to this like reasonable state. But this has now pushed everything further. I don't want to push it too far. But that I think that's as far as I can push it. Okay. And then we'll wrap this one up soon. So I know there's other questions, but feel free to repost a question if it's gotten buried in the chat. Anyway, our simulation should run relatively well on here. That's all shrinking down just fine. That's looking pretty good. The more geometry we have here, the more little lumps in there and whatnot, like I think the better that's going to do overall. And it's possible we start getting like crazy explosions and whatnot, but like this is a funky, weird, lumpy mess. I like it. I'm glad we made it silver. It makes it less gross looking. If this was a flesh color, it'd be terrible. Now, here's a subdivision surface, but we don't want a subdivision surface because it's going to take away the sharp edges. Like the sharp edges are kind of what make it. I mean, really what you want is rounded edges that are really tiny, but that's asking a lot. So this compression here was doing fine, but I'm going to try turn on that field force again, which is, I'm going to go weaker on it. Let's do 5 to not go crazy. But this should be that still really strong thing, pulling everything directly in, which is doing a very similar effect to the shrinking. And again, it's not shrinking. It's deflating. Very different concepts. Save. And let's see. I just want to see how far. Ooh, wow, look at that. Yeah, you can definitely feel the direction getting pushed. You can see how these are pinching in. Wow, look at that. Now what I really want, I don't know if it will, I want, maybe we have to add a little turbulence in here, but man, that's looking super crazy. Okay, we're going to increase the strength. and then add in a random field. This random field, which I'll set as our only default. And you know what? I don't know if it's going to change anything. I can tell it not to shrink anymore. So it's not going to worry about deflating. We're just going to use our field force to do all the deflation. So this is just pure random. And if we hit play right now, I want to see what ends up happening. Normal, field, random. That's the only thing happening. It's turned on, and cloth, bend, no ballooning. Okay, yeah, so this is just a randomness doing whatever random wants to do. Like I say, it still feels like it's shrinking, doesn't it? I know everything has to go in a direction, but that just feels like it's shrinking. Nothing here should be shrinking. I'm going to prove if it is or is not by inverting the direction. If it pushes out, it is pushing out. So for some reason that this random field, which should be overriding everything, isn't. Anyway, I'll just turn off the bust because I just want to see what random was doing. I'm just trying to get, yeah. See, this is what I was expecting from random, where it's like, okay, everything's just kind of moving in like a random direction, which is what I wanted. Because essentially I want something that will make these flaps fall over each other. So yeah, that's going to pull everything all over the place. Then we turn the head on, and then we add one effect to the other. So now everything should get pulled in overall, but there's also some sideways forces happening. We might need to calibrate things a little bit more, but as everything gets pulled in, everything's getting forced and crinkling, working pretty well. What I want to see is like one of these large ridges like that one. I want to see that like fall to one side or the other. Pretty deflated. Actually, it's pretty good. Let's see how far we can push this. Like the whole rig is here. Like all we're doing is tweaking settings. Like, you know, this is pretty good. Save. We could inflate more, which would give us more wrinkles, but really what we need is increased resolution and more force. So I'm going to pull this way up with force, and you know, if it's got more power, it's being forced really hard. I think the random noise needs to be smaller. Is that what we're seeing? Oh, it was what we were seeing. Interesting. Okay. So a smaller random noise improves. Everything's getting forced down. Everything's getting forced in. And are the wrinkles falling over? It's pretty dang deflated. And keep in mind, there is no deflation happening right now. So, you know, that's all just pretty good. So the only thing that we really had to play with here is already very bendy. The only thing that we have to play with is increased resolution, which means more folds can happen. And that's going to directly relate. That will directly relate to how slow it goes. So if we go to the remesh and just say, hey, like don't reduce the mesh at all. So this should be, I'm not sure if it's doubling or 4 times the polygon count. Yeah, the remesh. I thought the remesh would be like quicker if I thought that remeshing with a lower count made it go slower, but that just might not be a variable. Anyway, you can now see that we've got like way more polygons. And our random and smoothing is like creating a lot more like pre-wrinkled things. Again, they might be intersecting each other a little bit. It's not something I'm super worried about. I don't feel like we can push the remesh too much further, because otherwise I would be feeding these extra details into the pre-volume to make sure nothing was intersecting, but I'm kind of fine with this. Let's hide that so we're only seeing the head, and save. We got a lot of save files on this one, but it's looking cool almost every step along the way. FG. And exciting to save the wrong name. Yeah, we're learning new things about the simulation system, which I'm totally down with. Scrunch. It's actually running pretty well with that higher polygon count. getting pulled in pretty well. I mean, is there much more you could do with that? Like, that's pretty... Like, you know, we've got the face. Like, you definitely see the face. I mean, if you're actually talking about real foil, like, things get so hammered down so smooth, you can imagine all the geometry we'd need. You can see even right now, like, the resolution of these polygons is pretty large. Now, that ran relatively well. So... So we'll push it to the one last step, which is we'll just subdivide this one time straight up. So now you see, you know, 4 times as many polygons. Move the simulation up one level with so many more polygons. It's going to run significantly slower, but with any luck, we'll get better, tighter pinches. Yeah, 1 frame, 2, and it's just going to slowly go. The resolution of the noise is actually probably decently relevant here as well. Because I feel like we might be seeing the noise pattern emerge here, which is maybe in some ways that's good, maybe in some ways that's bad. It's running relatively well, but I want to switch this random field to Luca, because that's a big old messy noise. So I'll go like 222, but that should, if it is making patterns emerge, I'll be able to recognize it by making a larger Luca, because Luca tends to have some areas that are a little more uniform and other areas are really tight and pinched. So I just want to see if that does translate through. And like I say at a glance, like now we're not seeing those smooth bubbles anymore. So I think that this noise type actually does have a huge effect on it. But anyway, do you see like the huge difference between these two techniques? One dropping a sheet of aluminum foil and trying to model it to the head, and the other being like, well, let's just shrink it onto the head just a little bit with already pre-modeled. But you'll see one of my favorite workflows that came out with 26 being like taking a mesh, like even here, like we took a mesh, inflated it, it's super intersecting itself. It's like, well, okay, whatever. Like we'll turn it into a volume, turn it into a nice clean mesh, throw it into a remesher, make it into a nice looking mesh, and now we can run our sims on it. And with this being a giant parametric stack that we're able to, you know, have like a huge amount of control over. Like I have, we're not just guessing on any of the stuff here. Everything I was doing was precision, like let's inflate it a little bit more, let's subdivide it a little bit more, let's wrinkle these out a little bit more. This wasn't like, oh, you know, it's like, oh, well, maybe this will kind of work. It's like, no, it's giving me exactly what I want it to. I was trying to change the display type while it was playing, but so yeah, remember I was saying Luca has areas of detail. I was saying, yeah, like areas with tiny detail and areas with like large detail, and like look at this large piece right here, and look at all these tiny little ones here. So I think the Luca actually is translating through like shockingly well. That might also have to do with the ear pinching. Maybe it does make things different. You can see it almost gives us a baboon look right now because we're getting this very specific kind of nose. And it's probably this convex area can't pull the shapes in. I think that does kind of make sense actually. We'd have to do some things to compensate for that a little bit. But I think that's as far as I'm going to attempt to take this, because that's pretty good. Like, in theory, this isn't intersecting geometry. So along those lines, like this would be a pretty crazy thing to do. You know, this is a pretty crazy thing. It worked pretty well. I do feel like, you know, potentially there's things where you could have a outer shell of the head, and then you deflate that onto it, and that might help force some of these layers to be a little further down. We've subdivided it to the extent that it's taking a while to run. I'll save that, and then I'm going to make this 10 times stronger for our speed. I just want to see if it is able to, I mean, it might explode immediately. I kind of half expect it to, so I'm ready to hit stop very quickly. But I just want to see if any of these bubbles like collapse down and then fall over, which is what I really want. That's what's kind of lacking here, is we're getting really nice pinched effects. But I want... and deflating could help here. But... that's what's lacking, is we got these bubbles and the bubbles are leading to ridges, and on a proper kind of foiled thing, I feel like those would have fallen over flat. So instead of all these little mountain ridges, they'd be lying flat on the ground. I don't even think it's gone one frame forward, so this might just be so powerful that's like trying to pass it through the model, which could be a really bad idea. Luckily, we've been saving every step of the way just in case it, you know, doesn't want to wake up. And it is going to be calculating, but it might be like calculating like so many like impossible things that would just take a really, 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 really long time. Yeah, it's taking so long that I'm gonna attempt to pause it. So even if it finishes one frame, I definitely don't want it starting a second frame. So since it's taking a long time here, I'm gonna do a long single click hold on the pause. Hey, it did wake up. It does seem to have reset. I did change field stuff in the middle of it, but that shouldn't affect it. Anyway, I do kind of want to I'm going to try running one more frame again with the crazy high strength here. But I am going to jump to the chat and see if anybody's asking any questions or what the next question will be. Farzad looked like he was one step ahead of me as far as turning into a volume. So yeah, good call there. And in soft body dynamics, I think that this is better because this is a the new simulation stuff deflates, where the other thing would have shrunk. Now the other thing shrinking could have been good, and maybe even that would have been a good idea. I don't know if it would work, but if we tried doing the rest length shrink, ooh, that's weird. Why? It's like the simulation is just like, nope, gave up, and it's playing in real time without doing anything. So yeah, I think 500 is asking a bit much. Yeah, but shrinking the head could have, shrinking it with one simulation system that actually is rest and using that as a collider could have been interesting. Yeah, dropping it to 100 seems to be able to actually calculate. Even that one frame, like, that's really nice looking wrinkling. This is only double the strength. I would kind of like to just, I'm not going to run it through the aluminum part of the process, but I would kind of like to see if that shrinking the rest length, if this other simulation would see the result. I'm not sure which one calculates first. I am simulating on CPU, that is correct. It doesn't like when I run on GPU. I've done it on other machines, and it did like the GPU better. Somebody's saying, what if I had tried to do it with pose morph? I mean, pose morph, potentially you could get a series of bends to do it, but you know, ultimately you need like that final model. I'm gonna pause it. Ultimately you need that final model, and then how would you get that final model? Well, we're making that final model. Maybe you'd cross morph between this and the previous state. Maybe. You can't just crossfade between two states because things will pass through each other, but you know, you might get away with it. Can we use a cloth tag on the geometry of a rigged and animated character? No. I mean, you can put it there, but the animation isn't going to pass through. As I was saying earlier, I think my #1 feature request for the simulation stuff is a stiffness setting. If we had a stiffness setting, then the answer would be yes, but we don't. Right now, there's nothing that is attempting. There's nothing that is attempting to maintain the shape or tell this point you're supposed to be in a particular spot. So instead, it just instantly turns into like, you know, whatever. It's just instantly like a sack of an empty sack that just flops onto the ground. And with the since we found out that we are not able to keyframe on and off the simulation tag, that actually limits a decent number of things that I would probably do. But yeah, super crazy, kind of like physically, you know, like these things shouldn't be passing through each other too much. So, you know, pretty cool. I like it. Like I said, I did want to very quickly see if we can shrink the surface. So let's simplify, 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 simplify. Okay, so now we've just got the one inflated head. Oop, I deleted the remesh. Remesh. Okay, let's that remesh. Which it doesn't seem to. Oh, volume builder. There we go. Okay, so now you can see we have this outer head. Now the idea would be this wouldn't be foil. Let me show you what I'm talking about. I guess I'll leave these tags, but ignore these tags. They're going to be doing nothing. So we get this relatively clean mesh, which honestly I want to be more subdivided because we're using the old sim system, which is going to run slower. And let's turn off that subdivision. So this head will become a bullet collider body, and this overall mesh will be a bullet soft body, and Control D, bullet, zero gravity. Now here's something that's different in bullet than it is here. We have the rest length, which is definitely something we are lacking. So let's keyframe the rest length and jump up to, I don't know, 30 frames, and say the rest length will be 75. And changing nothing else, let me go 1 frame forward, just make sure it's not exploding. 2 frames forward. Okay, it seems to be okay. Hit play. I thought it was okay. Oh, it is running through the animation. It's going to take quite a few frames. But I guess with gravity off, not much is happening, so it just has to go frame by frame. So what should be happening here is the entire mesh is shrinking down. Actually, the way to even think of it, it's not like the entire mesh is shrinking down. There are connections. There are now springs between every single point. And the length of each spring is shrinking to a percentage, a smaller percentage. So that results in the entire thing shrinking. But, it's important to distinguish that this isn't just shrinking down on the axis. It's every single spring shrinking in length, which is pretty powerful. But my hope here is if it kind of works, that this will kind of somewhat tightly, smoothly, but tightly pull around the head. And if it does tightly pull around the head, we could potentially use that as something to, like, squish down the aluminum foil. I mean, it's kind of doing it. I forgot the old soft bodies. They don't like these little pinched things. Like you can see right here, these almost like nostril shapes have inverted. It just doesn't know how to deal with a pinch too well. I mean, it's shrinking on there. It's not doing much. I don't think we need to pursue it any further. I just wanted to see what it would do. And you can see definitely way slower. So the new simulation system, which is a particle-based system, definitely better. Pause. Rewind. Okie dokie. Let's call that one done. Stick a fork in it. Okay, back to the chat. Let's see. Oh yeah, Elaine is saying that there's a simulate menu, there's a simulate scene, and that's actually something I didn't even talk about in my big video, but there is something called a simulation scene, and that can be keyframed. Essentially the idea there is if we put all the stuff inside of the simulation scene, then this is almost behaving like its own scene file. So if we had 2 different ones, then we could have 2 different simulation systems that don't interact with each other. I haven't actually done much with it, but and I might be doing something wrong because these strings are clearly interacting with each other. So yeah, I had to figure out specifically what it's doing there, because I thought that these would not interact, and they are. But potentially there's more stuff to explore there, and it's my bad for not having explored any of that. But you see, it's just kind of the overall settings. It's just the settings inside of the project file, but instead now they are here but I thought it was supposed to limit things to not interact with each other. So we'll have to find out. Or at some point we'll find out. Monthlies. You got a question. It's from Houdini. Let's see. This is Human Element Motion in Houdini. I mean, yeah, I don't see anything here that we can't do in cinema. Very stylish. I like it. Yeah, we can make something along these lines. I like it. Okay, open up a new file. And how would I like to begin? I would like to begin with a helix aimed upward, no subdivisions, and it'll be 2,000 long. Put that into a cloner. Set the cloner to radial. Give it a decent radius, and we make as many of those as we want. Let's say 12. So that would kind of be like the outer line, and now we'd need the line for the spheres. So I think that'd be a relatively straightforward thing of just making a duplicate of that and then shrinking those lines in. So each of these would need to be put into its own container, because I would then do a pretty dang straightforward twist. We don't use twist too often, but it's good. I don't think I can fit the parent there, but here's a trick. If you put your model into a connect object and you put that inside and say fit the parent, it will see the entire thing. So even in that case, when in doubt, use a connect object. So that should be encapsulating the entire overall shape, which is great. Let's also put that one into a connect. I can put a twist on both of those, and essentially we want them to be identical, so we can just spin that as many times as we want. Zoom. I guess the radius is, I'm a little off on the scales. These should have been larger, or they don't have to be anywhere near as long. So, twist, fit. Yeah, different spirals, but that's fine. And then they taper. So, there's, going to be additional ways of doing this. I mean, we could use a taper. I'm not going to use a taper. Let's instead use a FFT. FFTs are good. Put that here, fit the parent, and always get rid of every single segment that you don't need. So in this case, I'm thinking something kind of like this, because now I can do a rectangular selection, select all those, and select these. T for scale, turn off Y, scale it down, T, turn off Y, scale it down. You see how those are all pinching in? We should also ignore that one for now. You see all those are pinching in, nice and tight. Invert my selection, scale up, and we make that one larger. And if you were extra inclined, we could say grab that and that. T for scale, scale it down, pinch it. And you see that I think we're getting a pretty close version of the shape we were seeing. So just by modifying the FFT, and because it's such a low resolution FFT, we get these nice smooth curves. So we can hide that FFT. I can make a duplicate of it after the other twist and unhide that. Now you see both of them are doing a similar thing. So this is now just a spline. It should be viewing it as a spline. I hope so anyway. So feeding that into a sweep, feeding into the said sweep a end side. It is indeed seeing it as a sweep. The only problem is I want the scale. Let's see if it does it. Yeah, see, one of the problems is, even though it's kind of cool, oh no, I think it is working. Okay, so I'm going to put a point in the middle, and we'll pull down the beginning, and we'll pull down the end. So you see those will fade out. You don't have to go all the way down. We can say, yeah, stay up a little bit. But anyway, those will get larger and smaller. So it's giving us that nice spiral, a few extra subdivisions. And then for the spheres, maybe a little more challenging because we have to do with the scale, but honestly, I think we just eyeball it. So again, this is just being treated as a spline, kind of a uniform spline. Yeah, this... Okay, no, looking at the reference, we're fine. I thought that there might be specific spacing on them, but there isn't. So all I need to do is create a sphere and cloner. Clone onto an object. The object will be this connect. Hopefully it sees it as a spline, which it does. I'll set it to step. Steps probably fine. Spheres are quite large, so we'll shrink them. I might not have put as much space in there, but I'm not going to super worry about that. I guess, yeah, I guess we should make them pretty large. What's cool is, you know, again, parametric, so we can say actually there should only be 6 of them going around. So yeah, now they're not colliding into each other nearly as much. Spacing, smaller spacing, until they're just, you know, I guess I'm letting them bump into each other. Maybe the sphere shouldn't be quite so large. Essentially, at the thickest point, they should just barely be touching. And then setting the spacing on this cloner. I guess it comes last. Set the spacing such that they're all lined up. And now that those are all lined up, we say, okay, cloner, you will be affected by a plane effector. The plane effector will not modify position, but it will affect scale in a uniform, absolute way, going all the way to -1. Everything shrinks to nothing. And now I can say field. I would like a linear field. Set it to Y and make it exactly as tall as our stack, which, oh yeah, it's half the amount, so let's say 500. I don't know why, for some reason, a linear field, even though we know that's 1,000 tall, the length is 500. At this point, if Maxon changed the default, it would break like linear fields are so common that it would probably break everybody's scene file, so at this point we're just stuck with that. I'm assuming it was a bug. I don't know why it would do that otherwise. Anyway, plane effector, we've got a linear field going. I'll create a curve and re-ramp the scale, which is backward. I guess that makes sense. You see it's doing the inverse of what I'm doing because we're telling it to scale down. But I would like this to be pretty dang symmetrical. And then I'll say an invert afterward. Now you see everything gets bigger. And we can still manipulate this curve to say how everything is supposed to be falling off. Yeah, I guess we can have those curve up a bit. And the linear field has nothing to do with anything else. In fact, that's passing up through a linear field. And if we look at the linear field, I can say color remap as a gradient. And now I can colorize this however I like. Let's make a nice teal, which will go from blue to teal to white. You see that we have complete control over exactly what the color is. Shrink those down. Yeah, any scale that I want those to be. Nice and clean, nice and parametric. We got our final geometry there. And under the cloner, we should be able to set a rate to, I don't know, let's say 20%. Hitting play, all those are traveling upward, so we don't even have any keyframes, and now they are all traveling. I'll say 10%. And now all those travel upward, doing their thing. We can make any changes we want. I think I would want the this FFD. I want these spheres to bend out a little bit more, so I can grab these outermost and scale that even wider. Yeah, I scale this any size I want, so ooh, that looks kind of cool. But yeah, you can see I can trap it a little bit better there. And these are slightly escaping in the midpoint, but that's just a scaling issue. So we go back to our plane effector, change our curve, and that's going to be all about like how this curve, yeah, there we go. Just shrink the scale, make sure that those aren't intersecting. And now it's filling up that shape really well. Now these look like they're moving up fast. They fade out, but it's just constantly moving. So yeah, like, it's a very, I mean, it's a proper rig. Like, we just have direct control over what this rig should be doing. And from a MoGraphy point of view, like, pretty straightforward to do this type of setup. Like, pretty clean hierarchy, complete control over every single detail. A lot of other things we could do with it if we wanted to, but I think it's just kind of working. Are there any... Oh, I guess just as a why not, let's make it loopable. The animation, the only animation is happening right now via a rate, and the rate is saying, oh, and also it's, yeah, this set to loop. I think we do want it to loop. Yeah, if we turn off, if we don't have loop, then the endpoint will just disappear. So what we're saying is you are going to travel 100% of the length of this over the course of, is that the way it works? 10%. Oh, we are going over the course of 1 second. We're making 1% of the progress. I'm sorry. Over the course of 1 second, we're making 10% of the progress. So how long would it take to do one full loop? Now, actually, we wouldn't have to do one full loop. We'd have to do one loop for every number of these. Actually, this might not work the way I'm thinking, because we also have this arbitrary step distance I set, which could affect it. But if we did want to travel all the way around over the course of, say, 90 frames, we would type in 33.33 and cut off 1 frame. I think that would loop. I don't see a pop, but they're moving kind of fast now, so it might be hard to tell. But yeah, I think that would make a perfect loop. And then there's going to be some relationship between the step. If you want to go half the speed, we have to make sure the step was some sort of increment of that. You know, not the hardest thing, but I don't think I'm going to push that any further. Is there anything I missed in the reference? I don't think so. Actually, the only thing that it's doing that we're not doing is they keyframed their twist. So, yeah, even nice patterns get revealed there. It's kind of cool. And you know, because we're deforming the spline and not the sweep, you can see that the sweep still looks really nice. Actually, what's kind of interesting here is the, like, do you see how it almost looks like they're still traveling up and down, but they're not. I'm just twisting because it's not playing while I'm holding down the control. Very cool. I like it. Trying to think if there's anything I want to add. It does go to, I've always got this inclination. I just, well, in this setup, I think it would be impossible. But because these spheres are smaller, it's like I want more spheres to fill up that space. I'm not sure how I would do that. Actually, an idea of how I would do that just popped into my head. You can clone onto polygons and scale the clone to the scale of the polygon. So if this was actually deforming the polygon, you could get the sphere to scale with it, I think. Yeah, that's something to keep in mind for the future. I'll save that because why not? Hopefully that answered. I think we almost exactly remade the original, so hopefully it answers the question. MoGraph. I don't even know what to call it. MoGraph dreidel? MoGraph spinner. What time do we got? 20 minutes. That's enough time for a little question. Anybody on YouTube? Thank you, Travis. Twirl, welcome. V Ruckus saying, does cloth system being particle based say anything about what features we might be seeing in the future? I don't think there's actually any indication between those. I think that this is based off an existing simulation system of some sort. I forget the name. I mean, it's like a technical term, but it was an implementation of the existing system and then modified to have cinema style and flavor and implement. You know, they did a lot of work, but it's based off a system. Which I don't think implies any kind of particle stuff, if that's what you mean. I mean, don't get me wrong. I would love to see some new particle stuff in some sort of giant unified cinema system, but I don't know about that. Tobias, what do you got here? Drawing lines from a base object to moving targets that are within a certain distance. That's very specific. Drawing lines from a base object to moving targets that are within a certain distance. I think I understand what this type of thing will show. This seems to be a tip from a Japanese channel. Yeah, this is pretty much exactly what I was expecting. It fades out nicely. Is this a tutorial but in Japanese? Yeah, this is a tutorial. You can just follow them. I know it's in a different language, but and they are using capsules, which is cool. All the capsules are in Japanese though, so I can't know for sure. And they are fading out, but there is essentially there is that type of fade property. So, it's neat. It's probably that everything, they're all connected all the time, and then only certain ones are fading in and fading out depending on a certain radius. So yeah, that's like a thing. But yeah, that's a tutorial. If you step through it very mechanically and look at what's set, and I guess everything's Japanese, so maybe it would be difficult to follow their nodes. So sympathies there. Having said that, how would I go about... there's no kind of proximal in Redshift, is there? And individual lines were fading out. What I'd love to do is just do a very simple rig. Where everything is connected to everything. You could make, making a single line have this behavior, not terribly difficult. We'd probably use a little bit of espresso. You either need a proximal or some sort of espresso to drive something. Ricochet could connect the lines. They wouldn't give you the ability to fade them out. Just to show you, just because it'd be so dang simple. Let's see, how do I want to make... Hey, we'll do a similar thing where it's kind of like a roadway. So using my plugin Ricochet, if we feed in... Actually, yeah, I'll make a clone. We'll clone a couple of those per step. What is the length? We'll do a length of 1,000. We will do a endpoint of 1,000. And how do I actually want to do this? Let's do it even simpler. Make the helix editable and zero it out so it's centered. And now the cloner will instead be set to linear, no offset. We'll do 50, and then random effector, which will do position, but not on Y. We'll push these out to about 500. And rotate them randomly up to 720. And I guess the positions, because the spiral's giving us most of that, I'm going to make the distance not so much. But anyway, you can just see I got these crazy lines crisscrossing, just to make it a little more complex. So with that being the case, I could feed this into a connect and make a matrix object. The matrix will be cloning onto an object, which is those roads, essentially. Even this distribution is completely fine. I don't mind that. And we'll give it some automatic rate, and I'll give it a bunch of speed variation. So now we should have like a nice traffic jam. So I just wanted kind of a crazy traffic jam effect. So now that that's happening, we would use my plugin Ricochet. If you don't have Ricochet, here it is. The Ricochet shoots lasers, but in this case we're going to use it very differently than we usually do. I want a second. So we're saying that these are the cars and they're all aligned, which is good. So I'm going to make a second matrix, and this time I'll say, okay, matrix object. This one will target something. So let's say that again, you know, there's kind of like this traffic beam here. It's like connecting. I imagine that was a thing of like cell phones connecting to a tower type of animation is the concept. So I guess to maintain the parallel, we'll do that. And why not? Okay, so we've got our second matrix. To distinguish, I'll make it a different color. And actually, let's make it twice as tall and half as skinny. So you can see that we kind of got this like little pole. I'll call that aim, and we're going to use that because I'll say, hey, target effector, and that will target what? I want to target an object, and the object will be the sphere. Boing! So now you can see all of those have changed, but now they are aiming at it, but not the correct orientation. It might be the correct orientation. I stretched it on Y, but really it should be Z. That makes sense, because Z is aiming at it. So you can see, and Z is the one we use anyway. So now you see all those, you know, every car is still facing forward, but now each of these is aiming at the tower. So now I can take my Ricochet plugin and say, let's not even worry about colliding. Right now it's just shooting a laser. But I'm going to say, hey, don't worry about shooting a laser, or don't just aim one laser out in space that direction. Instead, be based on the matrix. The matrix will be this aim matrix, and now you can see that we get a whole bunch of lasers. And now you can see that we have all these lasers, but they're hitting that object, or they're just passing right through that object and going, kind of going off into space. But I can say, okay, that's fine. I would like you to collide with something, and that's right here in the advanced modified settings under there's Terminator object. So if you collide with the sphere, stop growing. So you can see we get all these whatever length we want lasers all shooting, and they all connect to that tower, like the dead center, no matter where they are. And let's say Ricochet. Actually, let's go to spline, explode segments, and randomly colorize them. So we get all these different random colors. And I think we should be able to just hit play. And yeah, now we get like all this nice traffic going. And the traffic, you know, all these are constantly, you know, shooting a laser to connect with this main tower. It's like I said, the tricky bit here would be the fading effect. And I honestly don't have a great idea of how I'd want to do the fading. I've completely changed that. We can totally do the fading, I think, because they fixed a bug in Redshift that broke a part of our plugins that we did specifically for Redshift. Redshift changed something and broke it, but then I contacted them and they fixed it. Okay, so this is cool. Right now I'm randomly colorizing all of those. Let's say I need to bring it back. Ricochet currently is consuming the matrix object visually, but right now I made them all blue, right? I'm gonna say, let's not make them blue. Let's grab this matrix and feed it a target, or let's feed it a plane. I'll rename it plane.color. And this will not affect the position, but it will affect the color. Inside of fields, I can give this whatever I want. So let's make a spherical fall off and scale this up. And now you can see that we're getting whatever color. So it's actually based off the original one and fading out. If we set this to gradient, I think we get complete control. So there you go. Now you can see that they're black and white, and they will fade in and out depending on this transition. So that's full power, fading out. So set this to whatever scale I want. Perfect. Exactly what I want there. Okay. Now we turn on our Ricochet, and under Ricochet, it is currently referencing that aim, but under spline, colorize, there is a from matrix. So if I click on from matrix, you can now see that they've taken on the color of the matrix object. Like, man, we put so much work into these tools. It's crazy. You know, it's like, just as an anecdote, but like, you know, there's a, you know, no matter what you do, unless you made everything for free for everybody, somebody's going to complain. And like, you know, I'll get comments that are like, I might buy this for like $10. It's like, do you have any idea how much time and effort we put into this? But anyway, you can see that this is, we got these black lines out here, and then we got all these white ones on the inside. But what this means, if this does indeed work, is, let's save this because it's getting a little bit advanced. This is working really well. For a, actually, I put Ricochet in the number just so people getting the scene files on Patreon realize. And by the way, you will get all these scene files on Patreon, but in addition to that, there's a discount code for all the plugins if you're supporting on Patreon. And the discount code is, if you support for $10, you get an $11 coupon. If you support for $20, you get a $21 coupon. $50, you get a $51 coupon. So it pays for itself instantly. What do we got? Traffic connections. Okay, now we go into the wonderful world of Redshift. We need to make the spline render, so we can go to render Redshift object, and it will be, let's just do hairlines to begin with. And if we activate save and activate Redshift, because I'm always terrified with my machine while streaming. I like how the settings are all super duper tiny. Okay, here's the thing you have to do. This is the specific thing we did. Redshift the tag doesn't filter down to children. If we make this editable, it's actually a null with a whole bunch of different segments. A null with a whole bunch of different splines. So we made it so you can copy the tag to the splines by dragging the tag, under spline you can drag the tag into Redshift object, and now it's going to filter that tag all the way down, and now we see all of the lines come through, and they're coming through with the color. So now that that's happening, let's make a new, I assume, I haven't done it, but I assume we can use the new material, standard material, drop that on here, and that should see it. Now that presumably, yeah, it's going to take over the color, doesn't, nothing fancy there. But now I want there to be no color, no reflection, emission weight of 1. So now it should be luminant. And now if we double click on this tag, then now we want to control that. Now I want to control the color. So if I hold down control as I click on that dot right there, it'll actually put the node, the input here, and highlight it. So now we can double click and search for user and grab ourselves a color user data. And come on. I'm gonna stop the render. It seems to be trying to refresh these nodes or something. Or is that just a bug? Oh dear. I think I had this happen once before. The nodes don't want to rearrange. Oh, well, okay, I'm going to kind of ignore that. Hopefully we can get around. Oh, no, is it not even letting me select them? Oh, come on. Well, this is just being a straight up bug right now, because it's not giving me the settings. And if I delete, yeah, it's not acknowledging this window properly. So I think there's a bug. I should just send this whole video over to Maxon for some requests and some bugs. I think I'm in the 015. I think 105 is the new one. I thought. Maybe, hopefully. Well, hopefully not. Okay, well that one, it wasn't cooperating there, so apologies. But if I just make a standard, or is this, double clicking does make it the new one. Let me just try it again. See if it cooperates more. Color user data. Nope, still not letting me do it. Come on, Redshift. This isn't even Redshift, it's probably just the cinema interface. So let me try making a more classic Redshift material. Or is even that the new one? Nope. How do I force it? What is there, like a, I guess I could turn on the classic one, but that, yeah, I can't think of a way around it. We have to turn on the classic Redshift, which is not so good. How do we get there? Control or Command E. Open up our overall settings. Renderer, Redshift. Node material for presets. Node materials for presets, I think. Maybe. think so. Yeah, okay, so now we're in the old style. Okay, let's replace that material. Oops. Apparently double clicking on that line puts it in the center. That's not a bad thing to know. Double click. Okay, so now we get our espresso type layout. So I can't show up the new things. Oh yeah, I have to search over here. Lots of little differences. Anyway, back to where we were. Color user data. What user data? I want to look at the MoGraph color. So we feed that out into the overall emission color. We have to still turn off diffuse, turn off reflection, overall emission weight. So now, well actually, yeah, that should be filtering through. Let's activate our render view. MoGraph color. Actually, no. I clicked on MoGraph color. I think I actually wanted to go object display color for one. Yeah, there we go. So now you can see the color comes through. I actually kind of did the wrong setting there, where I don't want to feed that through into the emission color. Emission color should always be emission color, but what I do want to control is the transparency, which is opacity. So let's filter that through the overall opacity color. And there we go. So now the emission color can be white. There we go. So now all of those are aiming at the cars and they're fading out. And what's cool about this is, let's make it so the cars actually show up, and we can do that easily if I make a box. And I think, don't know for sure, but I think I want it to be longer on Z. So that's our car. Shrink it way down and tell that to be in the cloner. The cloner will be set to object mode, and the object will be that first matrix. So it can just reference the original first matrix. Yeah, so now we got individual cars. Those actually show up in the render. Shrink them down a hair. So now you can see that we got this line connecting to them. Our redshift material. Output. I haven't used this in a little bit. There we go. Overall color, blue. And now we get that. So now we're filtering this through. So like, yeah, every laser is going there, but it is being controlled via a fall off of which ones actually show up. And along those lines, what I like is we control that via this spherical field, or whatever we want it to be. So if I scale up the spherical field to be way bigger, then these, there'll be, you know, as soon as this refreshes, there's more lines in it. We could also say that that should be smaller, and we could give it a larger fade. Is that slightly... Where's the dot? I feel like I'm not in object mode. That would do it. I can grab this and I can shrink that down. So now we get more of a fade. So now, yeah, now it's doing more of a fade from one to the other. We could remap that in any way we wanted to, but yeah, those are all connected now. Laser, automatic setup, and we can change so many parts of this rig. Like, look, entirely, I guess I made the helix editable, but, you know, totally parametric setup. Yeah, and another fun way of using Ricochet. It just kind of, because it can tie in with a matrix object so well, like it opens up a lot of like MoGraph possibilities to do these types of fades and whatnot. So the when it actually comes to these lasers, like all we did was aim at the tower, use Ricochet, and then that was pretty much it. That's all we needed for all the lasers, which is the complicated part here. Save, play, and we get all our cars driving. Meep, meep. They're gonna be crashing into each other. We should make these dynamic. Simulation. No bullets. Rigid bodies. Follow position 5. Follow rotation. They're probably gonna pop from the front to the back. And we need the ground to be a bullet glider. Maybe one with no friction. But the funny thing is going to be, I think, when one gets to the end, it has to get back to the beginning. So they're going to, like, see this car is, like, trying to go. But now we get a nice traffic jam going. No. But look, actually, no, the simulation is running off this dynamic one. So I don't think we could have these crashes be doing the connections. I don't think we can. But as a maybe, if I connect that there and say... Oh yeah, it's a... I want that to acknowledge as a matrix object. But it's only acknowledging it as a geometry object. I don't know why that's a thing. Oh wait, axis, is that what I wanted? Oh, that totally worked. Awesome. Okay, so now I'm actually running. I told the aim to go wherever the cloner is. The cloner is being told to go over wherever that matrix is. And now we are getting these cars crashing into each other, sliding all over the place. But they are still connecting to the 5G here. Pew, 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 pew. That's fun. This area. Bad traffic here. That probably puts us almost exactly on time here. Let me see if there's any follow-up questions. Dutch Shane is asking why I'm using 1080s. I just haven't bought a new computer. If you want me to buy better stuff, then more people buy plugins. If more people buy plugins, I can get better hardware. Or support on Patreon. That's what I should do. I should, on Twitch, they... like the video game streamers always have the saving up for, whatever, a new sim rig for the racing game. I could be like, saving up for like new video cards. It's possible that I'm running a slightly out of date version. I have to make sure. But yeah, the fact that I keep on wanting to use the new material nodes, but then I run into some issue where it's like, oh dang it, that's not working. I have to go back to the old ones where I want to keep the new ones going. Let's see, bro. I've always want to ask, how do you get those lights behind you? Are they LED bulbs? Those are Hue bulbs from Philips. They're really expensive. It was actually Chad Ashley found them, and I thought they were really neat. So I got them as well. So yeah, Hue bulbs, because I can change the color with like a phone app to do it. They can even be like animated to do it. I think you can even set the systems up to like be synced up with music and whatnot. So yeah, the bulbs are pretty cool. But it's like $40 a bulb, so like they're not cheap. But what is cool is like if you plug, they're not super bright either, but at night they're bright enough. But like if you're in bed, you can just like fade them out really low for reading, and then when you're done, you just power them off via your phone. But at that point you have like Wi-Fi light bulbs, which if you're doing this type of thing is good, but otherwise probably be overkill. Anyway, I really liked tackling that question. Tobias, thank you for linking to it. I know it was in Japanese, but we went about it completely different than they did. They used scene nodes. So I gotta refamiliarize myself. I will be refamiliarizing myself with that sooner than later, for sure. Let's see. But we are at the end of today's stream. We'll be, of course, back again next week for another stream. I'm just seeing if there's any follow-ups here. Apologies for anybody who I didn't get to the question. Somebody said if you press C in the node editor, it'd fix the bug. Let me try that. That'd be interesting. We'll just try that and then I'll go. Okay, so I reactivated the node materials. Delete that one. Create a new one. Open this up, and if I turn... Oh, wait, did it... It fixed itself already. I don't even have to hit... Well, somebody said if I hit C, it would fix it. But see, like kind of arbitrarily, this is now working. And if I click on this, I actually get the input. So I don't know why it broke. We could have done it here. It just didn't want to work there. But like I said, that might have been a bug that's already fixed, and I just didn't update to the newest. I might have had like because I get access to the beta stuff, I might have had one tiny little build before, but I thought I fixed that. Maybe not. Maybe not. Anyway, thank you so much, everybody, for coming and hanging out and for the support. Again, anybody on Patreon will get access to all the scene files. I'm a little behind on that because I was trying to get that 26.1 video out. Yeah. And what else was I going to say? But yeah, you'll get the aluminum foil file. And what was the first thing we did? Oh, the connecting the ropes and everything. Yeah, we did really good questions today. I thoroughly enjoyed it. That should wrap all of this stuff up. Oh, yeah. Elaine is saying that the newest one is 107. So I swear I updated mine, and I don't know why it's not. So this might not be their fault. I might be running on a build that never even went public. So that was on me. Well, anyway, I'll fix that. That'll wrap this up. Thank you so much, everybody. I will see you in a week. And yeah, until next time. Bye-bye.